You can imagine, it was the kind of cold that didn't just freeze your flesh, it froze your will to survive. Thalara Zerain had nothing left. No shelter, no allies, and after 3 days of wandering the Frostlands, no reason to believe she'd see another dawn. She was starving in the middle of the unforgiving frozen wilderness, cast out by a society that measured worth in fangs and strength. But fate has a cruel sense of irony. Just as she prepared to collapse into the snow and accept her end, she smelled it. Blood, fresh and metallic, cutting through the pine-scented wind. A scent that forced her to make one final fatal choice. She didn't know the massive black wolf dying in that clearing was Bravenn, the most feared alpha king in the territory. And she certainly didn't know that by offering him her last piece of bread, she had just ignited a war. Snow fell in curtains thick and relentless, turning the world into a suffocating tomb of white. The wind howled through the valley of the Frostlands, a sound that usually warned scavengers to find shelter. But Thalara Zerain kept moving. She didn't have the luxury of shelter. Hunger gnawed through her abdomen like a living parasite, twisting her insides into knots. The emptiness was deep, a punishment from the village elders who had banished her for the crime of being too weak, too human, too kind. Thalara wasn't a shifter. She was an outsider, fragile, and currently dying. 48 hours. That was how long she had been wandering. Her meager supplies had run out on the first night, leaving her to subsist on melted snow and the fading memory of warmth. Her boots were split at the seams, her coat patched with scraps that did nothing against the sub-zero temperatures. Every breath felt like swallowing shards of ice. Thalara stumbled, her knees hitting the hard-packed snow. The impact sent tremors through her skeletal frame, and she coughed, watching her breath fog and dissipate into nothingness. No blood yet. That was something. "Get up," she whispered to herself, though the voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. "If you stop, you die here. Forgotten." And the law of the Fang had already forgotten her. She was a ghost in a land where only predators survived. She forced herself upright, using a gnarled pine branch for support. That was when she caught the scent. It wasn't the musk of a hunting party. It was sharp, urgent, and layered with something that made her survival instincts scream in warning. Iron, blood, and beneath it all, power. Thalara froze. Every rational thought told her to turn away. She was starving. She couldn't afford a detour. But the scent came again, carried on the wind like a summons she couldn't ignore. It pulled at something deep in her chest, something she thought the Frostlands had already killed. Compassion. She shifted her course, dragging her left foot, which had lost feeling an hour ago. About 70 yards off the game trail, beneath the skeletal shadows of frost-covered pines, she saw the source. A wolf. But not just any wolf. The beast was enormous, easily the size of a warhorse, its fur black as a moonless night and matted with frozen blood. It lay sprawled in a clearing, its massive side rising and falling in labored, uneven breaths. Silver chains wrapped around its front paw, the metal glowing faintly with an unnatural heat that sizzled against the creature's flesh. The stench of burning fur mixed with the copper tang of blood. Thalara dropped to her knees a few feet away. The wolf's head snapped toward her, lips curling back to reveal fangs the length of daggers. Its eyes, brilliant amber, flecked with gold, locked onto hers with an intensity that should have sent her running. But she saw something there. Not rage, not hunger, pain, and something terrifyingly human. Recognition. "Easy," Thalara rasped, her voice cracking from disuse and dehydration. Her hands trembled violently, whether from hypothermia or fear, she couldn't tell. "I won't hurt you." The wolf's eyes narrowed, its breathing ragged. It was alone. No pack would leave an alpha of this size unless they wanted him dead. The silver chains told her everything she needed to know. This wasn't an accident. This was an assassination. Thalara looked at the wound in the wolf's side. It was deep, precise, made by a blade designed to kill. And the silver chain, whoever had done this knew exactly what they were doing. Silver didn't just wound shifters, it poisoned them from the inside out. She should leave. She should run. This creature could kill her with a single swipe, even wounded. Instead, Thalara reached into her tattered coat with shaking fingers. Her hand closed around the only thing keeping her alive. A single piece of bread, small and rock hard, the crust spotted with mold. It was her last meal, her final chance at survival. The wolf watched her, those amber eyes unblinking. Thalara extended her hand, the pathetic offering resting in her palm. "I know what it's like," she whispered, "to be left to die." For a moment, nothing happened. The wind screamed, the snow fell, and Thalara Zerain knelt in the frozen wasteland, offering mercy to a monster. Then the wolf moved. Slowly, painfully, it stretched its massive head forward and took the bread from her hand with surprising gentleness. Their eyes met one final time before darkness claimed Thalara's vision, and she collapsed into the snow. She never saw the way the wolf's eyes changed, from amber to electric blue, from animal to something far more ancient, and she never heard the words that rumbled from deep within the beast's chest, spoken in a voice that shook the very trees. Finally, a soul worth saving. The bread sits in Thalara's palm like a death sentence. Her fingers shake so violently that flakes of mold dust the snow beneath her hand. The wolf's massive head hovers inches away, those amber eyes boring into hers with an intelligence that makes her throat tighten. She can feel the heat radiating from the creature's breath, each exhale a cloud of steam that washes over her frozen knuckles. The silver chain around its paw hisses and pops, filling the clearing with the sickening sweetness of burning flesh. Thalara's stomach clenches. Hard. The hunger is a living thing now, clawing at her from the inside, screaming that this is suicide. That piece of bread is her tomorrow, her next week, her only chance. But the wolf isn't moving. "Take it," she whispers. Her voice cracks on the second word. The creature's eyes narrow. For a heartbeat, Thalara sees her reflection in those golden depths, a skeletal girl with hollow cheeks and cracked lips, kneeling in the snow like a pilgrim before a god. Then something shifts. The wolf's pupils dilate, the amber irises brightening to an almost luminous gold. It leans forward. The movement is slow, deliberate, as if the beast is fighting against its own instincts. Thalara holds her breath. The wolf's muzzle is the size of her head, scarred and massive, close enough that she can see the individual whiskers frosted with ice. Its teeth could crush her skull like an eggshell. Instead, the wolf's lips part with surprising gentleness. Hot breath washes over her palm as it takes the bread, tongue rough against her skin for a fraction of a second. The contact sends a jolt through her. Not fear, but something stranger. Recognition, like touching a mirror and finding warmth on the other side. The wolf pulls back, the bread disappearing between its jaws in a single swallow. Then the eyes change. Amber bleeds to blue, not the pale blue of ice, but electric, crackling, alive. The color of lightning trapped beneath a frozen lake. Thalara gasps, her hands still extended, fingers curled where the bread used to be. The air between them charges, thick and heavy, pressing against her ribs like an invisible hand. The wolf's breathing steadies. The ragged, desperate quality fades into something deeper, more controlled. Its massive chest rises and falls in a rhythm that seems to sync with her own stuttering heartbeat. Thalara tries to speak. Her lips form words, but no sound comes out. The world tilts sideways, edges blurring into watercolor smears of white and black and gold. Her vision tunnels, darkness creeping in from the periphery like ink spreading through water. She realizes distantly that she's falling. The snow rushes up to meet her face, soft and strangely warm. Her cheek presses against the frozen ground, and she can smell pine needles and blood and something else, something wild and ancient that has no name. Her eyelids are too heavy. The darkness is too welcoming. The last thing she sees before the world goes black is the wolf rising to its feet, silver chains shattering like glass, blue eyes blazing with an otherworldly fire. The last thing she hears is a voice, low and resonant, rumbling through the earth itself. "You just saved a king, little human." Then, nothing. When Thalara Zerain wakes, she won't be in the forest anymore, and the monster she fed will have become something far more dangerous, a debt. Rough hands yank Thalara upright by her hair. The pain explodes across her scalp, white-hot and immediate, jerking her from unconsciousness into a reality far worse than freezing to death in the snow. Her eyes snap open to dim light filtering through rotted wooden slats. Hay. She smells hay and manure and something metallic that makes her gag. "She's awake!" a voice growls above her. Male. Close enough that spittle hits her cheek. Thalara tries to move, but her wrists are bound behind her back with rope so tight it cuts into her skin. Her shoulders scream in protest, joints wrenched at an unnatural angle. She's on her knees, cold stone pressing through her thin trousers, and when she looks up, 3 figures loom over her like executioners. Scouts. Their leather armor bears the crest of a snarling wolf's head, silver thread gleaming in the weak light. The one gripping her hair has a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, his lips pulled back in a sneer that shows too many teeth. "Found her in the western clearing," he says, not to her, but to someone behind. Unconscious, reeking of the king's blood. Thalara's heart slams against her ribs. The king, the wolf. She tries to speak, but her throat is sandpaper, her tongue thick and useless. A shadow moves in her peripheral vision, and then he's there. Tall, broad-shouldered. His face could have been carved from the same stone as the barn floor, all sharp angles and cold calculation. He wears a cloak of midnight blue trimmed with silver fur, and when he crouches in front of her, she sees his eyes. Gray, storm cloud gray, empty. "Thalara Zerain," he says, her name sliding off his tongue like a curse. "The human outcast. Tell me, girl, where is King Bravenn?" The question punches the air from her lungs. She shakes her head, the movement jerking her hair in the scout's grip. I don't... The backhand comes so fast she doesn't see it. Her head snaps to the side, copper flooding her mouth. The barn tilts, spins, and she would have fallen if not for the fist still tangled in her hair. "Lord Varric doesn't appreciate liars," Scar-Eye hisses in her ear. Varric. The name triggers something, a fragment of a conversation she overheard weeks ago in the village. The king's brother. The ambitious one. Lord Varric stands, towering over her like a monument to cruelty. He pulls a cloth from his pocket, wiping invisible dirt from his fingers with slow, deliberate strokes. "We found you covered in his blood. The silver chains were shattered. And the king..." His voice drops, soft and dangerous. "The king is nowhere to be found." Thalara's pulse thunders in her ears. He was dying. You just what?" Varric's boot connects with her stomach. The air evacuates her body in a single violent rush. She doubles over, gagging, retching nothing but bile, onto the stone. White spots dance across her vision. She can't breathe, can't think. The pain is everywhere and nowhere, a red haze that drowns out everything else. When she finally drags in a breath, it rattles through her chest like broken glass. Varric crouches again, close enough that she can smell wine on his breath. Here's what's going to happen, human. You're going to the capital. You're going to stand before the council, and you're going to confess to murdering the Alpha King. No. The word scrapes out of her, barely a whisper. His smile is a knife. You don't have a choice. He nods to the scouts. Iron cuffs snap around her wrists, replacing the rope, cold and unforgiving. They haul her to her feet, and her knees nearly buckle. Through the barn door, she sees a wagon waiting in the snow, its bed lined with chains. Varric leans in one last time, his lips brushing her ear. Scream all you want, girl. No one's coming to save you. The king is dead, and you're going to burn for it. They drag her into the frozen dawn, and the last thing she sees before they throw her into the wagon is the tree line in the distance, dark, silent, and watching. The capital awaits, and with it, the executioner's blade. But in the shadows of the Frostlands, something ancient is waking, and it remembers the taste of mercy. Hit the subscribe button if you want to know about what happened next. The crowd roars like a living beast. Thalara stumbles as the guards shove her onto the platform, iron chains rattling between her wrists and ankles. The wood beneath her bare feet is slick with old blood, and when she lifts her head, she sees them, hundreds of them, packed into the courtyard of the capital's central square. Wolves in human form, their eyes glowing gold and silver in the torchlight, their faces twisted with rage and grief. They want blood. Hers. A stone hits her shoulder. Then another. She staggers, catching herself before she falls, and tastes copper where her lip splits, open. The crowd surges forward, held back by a line of armored guards whose faces remain carefully blank. Murderer! Human filth! Rip her apart! The voices blend into a cacophony of hatred that vibrates through her bones. Thalara's knees threaten to buckle, but the chains keep her upright, locked to a post behind her. She can't run, can't hide, can barely breathe through the terror clawing up her throat. Then the horns blast. 3 long notes that cut through the chaos like a blade. The crowd falls silent instantly, the shift so abrupt that Thalara's ears ring in the sudden quiet. Every head turns toward the massive stone steps leading up to the palace entrance, where a figure emerges draped in ceremonial furs. Lord Varric. He descends slowly, each step deliberate, calculated for maximum impact. The torchlight catches the silver embroidery on his cloak, making him appear almost ethereal, almost holy. When he reaches the platform, he doesn't look at Thalara, doesn't acknowledge her existence at all. Instead, he addresses the crowd, his voice carrying with preternatural clarity. My brothers, my sisters. He pauses, letting the words settle. Today, we mourn. A collective intake of breath ripples through the assembly. Thalara watches, frozen, as Varric raises one hand to his chest in a gesture of grief so perfectly executed it could be genuine. King Bravenn is dead. The words detonate like a bomb. Howls erupt from the crowd, not of rage now, but of anguish. Raw, primal. The sound makes Thalara's skin crawl, makes her heart stutter in her chest. She sees mothers clutching their children, warriors dropping to their knees, elders covering their faces. Varric lets the grief build, lets it crest and break like a wave. Then he turns. His eyes find hers, and in them, she sees nothing. No remorse, no humanity. Just cold, calculating ambition wearing the mask of sorrow. This creature. He gestures toward Thalara without touching her, as if proximity might contaminate him. This human was found in the western woods, covered in our king's blood. The silver chains that bound him were shattered. His body... His voice cracks, a masterful touch. His body was gone, taken, desecrated. Thalara's mouth opens. That's not... A guard's fist slams into her kidney from behind. She chokes, the words dying in her throat, and sags against the chains. Her vision blurs with involuntary tears. Varric continues as if she hasn't spoken. She used human witchcraft. Poison. The kind that leaves no trace, no evidence, only ash and memory. He steps closer now, close enough that she can see the calculated fury in his eyes. The law of the Fang demands justice. The crowd erupts again, but this time the sound is unified. A single word, chanted over and over until it becomes a heartbeat. Death, death, death. Varric leans in, his lips barely moving, his words meant only for her. Smile for them, little human. You're about to become a legend. He straightens, raises both arms to the sky, and his voice booms across the courtyard. At dawn, this creature will face the executioner's blade, and with her death, we will cleanse the Frostlands of human weakness forever. The roar that follows shakes the very stones beneath Thalara's feet. She lifts her head, searching the crowd for even one sympathetic face, one person who might question this madness. She finds nothing but hatred. The dawn is coming, and with it, the blade. But somewhere in the darkness beyond the Capitol walls, amber eyes are watching, and a debt is about to be paid in full. The scrape of claws on stone wakes her. Thalara's eyes snap open to absolute darkness, her breath catching in her throat. She's pressed against the far corner of her cell, knees drawn to her chest, the damp stone wall cold against her spine. The sound comes again, deliberate, rhythmic, growing closer with each passing second. Something is in the corridor. Her fingers dig into the rough fabric of her prison, tunic, nails biting through to skin. The cell door is iron, 3 inches thick, with a slot at the bottom barely large enough for a food tray. She hasn't eaten in 2 days. The guards don't waste resources on the condemned. The footsteps stop. Silence stretches, thick and suffocating. Thalara's pulse hammers in her ears, so loud she's certain whatever is out there can hear it. Then, movement at the door slot. The iron grate scrapes open, metal grinding against metal, and something slides through. Not a tray, a paw. Massive, black-furred, claws the length of her fingers gleaming dull silver in the non-existent light. Thalara's breath freezes in her lungs. The paw withdraws, and something else pushes through the slot, a cloth bundle that lands with a soft thud on the stone floor. She doesn't move. Can't move. The scraping resumes, but this time it's receding. Whatever brought the bundle is leaving. Thalara waits, counting her heartbeats, 10, 20, 50, until the corridor falls, silent again. Only then does she crawl forward on hands and knees, her chains dragging behind her. The bundle is wrapped in leather, still warm. She unwraps it with shaking hands and nearly sobs. Bread. Real bread, soft and fresh. A piece of dried meat. A small clay bottle that sloshes when she lifts it. Water, cold and clean. Her stomach clenches so hard it hurts, saliva flooding her mouth. She hasn't seen food like this since before her exile. She devours it. No hesitation, no questions. Survival overrides everything else. It's only after, when her stomach is full and her thoughts begin to clear, that the wrongness settles in. Guards don't feed prisoners, especially not prisoners sentenced to die at dawn. And that paw, too large for any wolf she's ever seen, even in the Frostlands where the shifters run bigger than natural. The next night, it happens again. Thalara is awake this time, sitting with her back to the wall when the claws scrape stone. Her entire body tenses. The door, slot opens. The same massive paw appears, sliding another bundle through before vanishing. She waits until the footsteps fade before retrieving it. More food. Better than before. Roasted venison, winter berries, a small wedge of cheese. And beneath the food, something else. A scrap of fabric, dark blue, embroidered with silver thread. Royal colors. Thalara's hands begin to shake. She holds the fabric up to the thin crack of moonlight seeping through the barred window above. The embroidery is unmistakable. A wolf's head, crowned, the symbol of the Alpha King. Her mind races. The king is dead. Varric said so. The entire capital mourned. But this fabric is fresh, the scent still clinging to it. Pine and earth and something wild that makes the hair on her arms stand up. She drops it like it's burning. On the third night, she doesn't eat the food immediately. Instead, when the claws scrape stone, she scrambles to the door and presses her face against the cold iron, peering through the slot. All she sees is darkness. And then, for a fraction of a second, a flash of amber. No, not amber. Blue. Electric blue, crackling with the same otherworldly energy she saw in the forest clearing. The eyes blink once, slow and deliberate. Then they're gone. Thalara staggers back, her breath coming in short, shallow gasps. Her back hits the wall and she slides down, staring at the bundle of food, at the royal fabric, at the impossibility spreading through her chest like wildfire. The king isn't dead. And he's been feeding her. Tomorrow she faces the executioner. But tonight, in the shadows of her cell, Thalara begins to understand. Mercy is never wasted, and debts in the Frostlands are always paid. In blood, in power, or in the shattering of thrones. The council chamber reeks of blood and authority. Thalara is dragged in at dawn, chains biting into her wrists, guards flanking her on either side. The circular room is carved from black stone, its walls lined with torches that cast dancing shadows across the faces of the 12 council members seated in elevated thrones. Each one wears the mark of their station. Furs, bones, silver chains that denote rank and kill count. Their eyes track her movement like predators watching wounded prey stumble into their territory. Lord Varric stands at the room's center, hands clasped behind his back, his posture radiating controlled grief. When Thalara is forced to her knees before him, he doesn't look at her. His attention remains fixed on the council, on the eldest member, a woman whose white hair cascades down her shoulders like a waterfall of ice. Elder Morwen, the Fang Mother, the one who wrote half the laws that govern this frozen hell. The human has been detained for 3 days, Varric says, his voice echoing off stone. 3 days of silence from our king. 3 days of his absence. The evidence is irrefutable. Evidence, Elder Morwen repeats, the word sharp as a blade. Her milky eyes find Thalara, and something cold slithers down the girl's spine. Show us. Varric nods to a guard who steps forward carrying a wooden box. He opens it with ceremony, revealing its contents to the council. Thalara can't see from her position, but she hears the collective intake of breath, sees the way several council members lean forward. The king's collar, Varric announces, found at the site where the human was discovered, covered in his blood. A lie. Thalara's jaw clenches. She saw no collar in that clearing, only chains and pain and those amber eyes that held more humanity than anyone in this room. And the silver? Another council member speaks, a man with a scarred face and a voice like grinding stones. Shattered, destroyed by human magic. Varric's delivery is flawless, the kind that corrupts from within, that turns strength to weakness, that poisons the very essence of what we are. Murmurs ripple through the council. Thalara watches their faces shift, watches doubt harden into certainty, watches Varric's lies take root like weeds in fertile soil. Elder Morwen raises one weathered hand. Silence falls instantly. The law of the Fang is clear, she says, each word deliberate, final. When human weakness threatens the pack, it must be excised, burned away, forgotten. Her eyes bore into Thalara. This creature has committed the highest treason. She has stolen from us our king, our future, our strength. Thalara's mouth is dry. She tries to speak, but one of the guards yanks her head back by her hair, exposing her throat in a gesture of submission she didn't choose. The sentence? Varric asks, but there's no question in his tone, only inevitability. Elder Morwen stands. The other council members follow, a choreographed display of unity that makes Thalara's stomach turn. Death, the Fang Mother declares. Public execution at the lunar spire. Let every pack member witness what happens when humanity dares to challenge the natural order. Tomorrow, Varric suggests. No. Morwen's smile is thin, cruel. Tonight, before the moon rises, we will not let this contamination fester a moment longer than necessary. The gavel strikes stone, once, twice, 3 times. The sound reverberates through Thalara's bones like a death knell. She's hauled to her feet, chains rattling, and as the guards drag her toward the exit, she catches Varric's reflection in the polished stone floor. He's smiling, not the practice grief he wears for the council, but something genuine, victorious, the smile of a man who has just seized a kingdom. The doors slam shut behind her, and the last thing she hears is Elder Morwen's voice, cold and absolute. Prepare the spire. Tonight we remind the Frostlands why humans kneel. The moon will rise in 6 hours. The executioner's blade is being sharpened, and somewhere in the depths of the capital, a massive black wolf paces his hidden den, counting down the minutes until mercy demands a reckoning. The first stone hits her temple. Blood blooms hot against Thalara's frozen skin, trickling down past her ear to stain the collar of her execution tunic. The impact sends her stumbling sideways, chains jerking her back to center as the guards shove her forward. Keep moving, always moving. The cobblestone street stretches ahead like a gauntlet, lined on both sides by thousands of howling faces. Murderer! Burn her! Let us tear her apart! The crowd presses against the barriers, hands clawing at empty air, spittle flying from twisted mouths. Thalara lifts her head, forcing her eyes forward, fixing her gaze on the lunar spire rising in the distance like a black fang against the twilight sky. That's where she'll die, where they'll mount her head on a pike as a warning to anyone who dares show mercy in a land built on cruelty. Another stone strikes her shoulder blade, then her ribs, then her thigh. Each impact a burst of white-hot pain that she swallows down, refusing to give them the satisfaction of her screams. A child no older than 10 breaks through the barrier, racing forward with a jagged rock clutched in both hands. A guard intercepts him, but not before the boy spits at Thalara's feet. "You killed our king!" he shrieks, tears streaming down his cheeks. "You killed him!" Thalara's throat tightens. The guard drags the child back into the crowd, and she watches him disappear into the sea of hatred, another victim of Varric's perfectly crafted lie. The procession passes through the merchant district where vendors have closed their shops to line the streets. An old woman throws ash from a ceremonial bowl, the gray powder coating Thalara's hair, her face settling in the blood still flowing from her temple. "May you never find peace," the woman chants. "May your soul wander the wastes forever." Others take up the chant. "May you wander. May you freeze. May you starve as our king starved." Thalara's legs threaten to give out. 3 days of minimal food, 3 nights of fear, and now this, the slow, deliberate parade of her own execution. The guards don't let her rest. When she stumbles, they haul her upright. When she slows, they prod her forward with the butts of their spears. A rotten cabbage explodes against her back, then eggs, then something that smells like sewage. The stench is overwhelming, mixing with the ash and blood until she can barely breathe without gagging. But she doesn't fall. She thinks of the wolf in the forest, the way those amber eyes held intelligence and pain and something desperately human. She thinks of the bread, her last piece of survival offered to a creature that should have killed her. She thinks of the midnight visitor, the electric blue eyes watching from the darkness, the impossible truth she's begun to understand. Mercy is not weakness. Even here, marching toward death through a tunnel of hatred, she knows this with absolute certainty. They can throw stones. They can curse her name. They can execute her at the spire and mount her head as a trophy. But they cannot make her regret her choice. The lunar spire looms closer now, its obsidian surface reflecting the first stars of evening. Torches line the approach, creating a pathway of fire that leads to the raised platform where the executioner waits. Thalara can see his silhouette, massive, hooded, the silver axe already gleaming in his hands. The crowd's roar reaches a crescendo as she begins the final climb. 100 steps carved into the mountainside, 100 steps to her death. She takes the first one, then the second, her bare feet leaving bloody prints on black stone. On the 50th step, she looks back. The entire capital spreads below her like a living organism, thousands of eyes watching, thousands of throats screaming for her blood. Somewhere in that mass of bodies, Lord Varric is smiling. Somewhere, the council congratulates itself on upholding the law of the Fang. And somewhere, in the darkness beyond the torchlight, something is moving, something massive. Thalara turns away and climbs. The executioner's blade waits at the summit. The crowd chants for death. And in the shadows beneath the spire, amber eyes blaze with a fury that will shake the foundations of the Frostlands. The debt is due, and kings do not forget. This is also to tell you that to subscribe to my channel is due at this moment, and your support will not be forgotten. The silver blade catches moonlight like a promise of oblivion. Thalara kneels on the executioner's block, her neck pressed against wood still warm from the afternoon sun, her hands bound behind her back with iron that burns against her skin. The crowd below roars, 10,000 voices unified in bloodlust. But up here, at the summit of the lunar spire, there's only the whistle of wind and the executioner's breathing behind his hood. Lord Varric stands to her right, elevated on a platform that puts him above even the executioner. He's changed into ceremonial armor, silver and midnight blue, a crown of wolf's teeth, circling his head, playing king before he's earned the throne. Any last words, human? His voice carries across the spire, amplified by the stone acoustics. Thalara's jaw clenches. She could beg, could plead, could tell them about the midnight visitor, about the blue eyes in the darkness, about the impossible truth she's pieced together. But they wouldn't believe her. And more importantly, she won't give Varric the satisfaction. Mercy, she whispers instead. The word meant only for herself is never wasted. Varric's laugh is sharp. Execute her. The executioner raises the blade. Thalara watches her shadow stretch across the stone, elongated and distorted, a ghost of the girl who offered bread to a dying wolf. The crowd's chant builds to a fever pitch. Death, death, death. The blade begins its descent. Then the ground shakes. Not an earthquake. Something worse. The tremor rolls up through the spire's foundation, rattling teeth, cracking stone, sending loose rocks tumbling down the mountainside. The executioner stumbles. The blade veers off course, missing Thalara's neck by inches and embedding itself in the block with a sound like thunder. Silence falls. Absolute. Suffocating. Thalara lifts her head, neck muscles screaming, and sees them. Every face in the crowd turned away from her, toward the base of the spire where the torchlight meets shadow, toward something emerging from the darkness. A wolf. But not just any wolf. The creature is massive, larger than a warhorse, larger than memory, black as a moonless night with fur that seems to absorb light rather than reflect it. Silver scars crisscross its flanks, old wounds that speak of battles survived and enemies destroyed. It moves with impossible silence for something its size, each paw placement deliberate, controlled, lethal. Its eyes burn electric blue. Thalara's breath stops. She knows those eyes, has seen them in the forest clearing, in the darkness of her cell, in the space between desperation and hope. The wolf's lips peel back, revealing fangs the length of daggers. A growl rumbles from its chest, not sound, but vibration, a frequency that resonates in bone and blood and the primal part of the brain that remembers when humans were prey. Then it roars. The sound is apocalyptic. It doesn't just fill the air, it becomes the air, a physical force that slams into the crowd like a wave, that shatters torches and sends people to their knees. Thalara feels it in her sternum, a percussion that restarts her heart with a different rhythm. On the platform, Varric's face drains of color. "No," he whispers. "You're dead. I watched you." The wolf leaps. The distance from ground to summit is impossible, 60 feet of sheer stone. But the creature moves like gravity is a suggestion, not a law, its massive body arcing through the night sky with predatory grace. It lands on the platform between Thalara and the executioner, the impact cratering stone and sending cracks spiderwebbing across the spire's surface. The executioner doesn't run, doesn't even have time to scream. The wolf's paw strikes him once, a casual swipe that sends the hooded figure flying off the platform into the darkness below. Then the creature turns to Lord Varric. Varric stumbles backward, his hand reaching for a sword he's not wearing, his mouth opening and closing like a fish drowning in air. You can't. The silver should have. The wolf's massive head swings toward Thalara. For one breathless moment, those blue eyes meet hers, and she sees recognition, gratitude, fury on her behalf. Then the transformation begins. Bones crack. Muscles tear and reform. The wolf's massive frame contorts, shrinks, reshapes into something impossibly more dangerous. And when King Bravenn rises to his full height, 7 feet of scarred muscle and ancient power, the Frostlands learn what happens when you try to execute a king's savior. Bravenn catches the executioner's blade with his bare hand. The silver axe, still falling from where it flew during the wolf's landing, descends toward the kneeling girl, and the man who was a beast moments ago intercepts it midair, his palm closing around the gleaming edge. Blood wells between his fingers, black in the moonlight, sizzling where metal meets flesh. He doesn't flinch, doesn't blink, just holds it there, suspended, while 10,000 witnesses watch their dead king stand resurrected before them. He is magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. 7 feet of corded muscle and ancient scars, his chest bare except for the silver wounds still healing across his ribs, the same wounds Thalara saw in the forest. His hair is long, black, streaked with silver at the temples. His face is all sharp angles and harder edges, a warrior's face, a killer's face. But his eyes, those electric blue eyes, burn with an intelligence that makes everyone on the spire remember why wolves bow to kings. "Lord Varric," Bravenn says, his voice a rumble that vibrates through stone. "Brother!" Varric is pressed against the far edge of the platform, his ceremonial crown askew, his silver armor suddenly looking like costume jewelry on a child. You're supposed to be... Dead? Bravenn releases the axe. It clatters to the stone, forgotten. Yes, that was your plan, wasn't it? Silver chains, poisoned blades, left to rot in the western woods while you seized my throne. He takes a step forward. Varric flinches. But you made one miscalculation, brother. The king turns, his gaze finding Thalara still kneeling on the executioner's block, her neck scraped raw from where the blade nearly fell, ash and blood caking her face. He moves toward her, each step measured, and crouches beside her with unexpected gentleness. His hand, the one not bleeding from catching the axe, reaches out and breaks the iron chains binding her wrists as if they're paper. You forgot, Bravenn continues, his words meant for Varric, but his eyes on Thalara. That silver poisoning feeds on rage, on hatred, on the very law of the Fang you worship. He stands, pulling Thalara up with him, his hands steady on her elbow when her legs threaten to buckle. For 3 days, I lay dying in that clearing, the silver burning through my veins, my own fury accelerating the poison. He releases Thalara gently, then turns to face the crowd below. His voice rises, carrying across the entire capital with preternatural clarity. Then this girl found me. He gestures toward Thalara without looking away from his audience. A human, starving, cast out by your precious law. She had one piece of bread, her last meal, and she gave it to a monster that should have killed her. Murmurs ripple through the crowd. Confusion, disbelief. Mercy, Bravenn declares, the word echoing off stone, purified the poison, not strength, not violence, not the Fang. Simple, human kindness neutralized a curse designed to kill me from within. His lips pull back in something too feral to be called a smile. So tell me, brother, when you found her covered in my blood, when you dragged her here in chains, when you sentenced her to death for saving my life, did you do it out of ignorance, or because you knew she was the only witness to your treason? Varric's mouth opens, closes. No sound emerges. Bravenn raises his hand, the bleeding one, and lets the crowd see the wound. I watched from the shadows as you lied to my council, as you paraded my savior through the streets like a criminal, as you prepared to execute the only reason your king still draws breath. The blue in his eyes intensifies, crackling like lightning. The law of the Fang ends tonight, and so does your life. Varric lunges for the axe. Bravenn is faster. The king's hand closes around his brother's throat mid-dive, lifting him off the ground with one arm. Varric's feet kick at empty air, his hands clawing at the iron grip cutting off his oxygen. The crown of wolf's teeth falls from his head, clattering across stone. Any last words, usurper? Bravenn asks softly. Varric manages one strangled syllable. Please. Mercy, Bravenn says, is earned. He throws his brother off the spire. Varric's scream cuts short halfway down. The crowd erupts, not in rage, but in deafening silence. And on the blood-stained platform, King Bravenn turns to Thalara Zerain and offers his hand. The girl who fed a dying wolf. The human who saved a kingdom. The woman who will become a queen. Bravenn's hand remains extended in the silence. Thalara stares at it, scarred knuckles, blood still dripping from where silver bit into flesh. The palm that just ended a usurper's life now offered to her, like a bridge between two worlds. Her own hands tremble, ash-covered and small, the wrists still bearing red marks from the iron chains. The entire Frostlands watches from below, thousands of eyes burning into her back, waiting to see if the condemned human will dare touch their king. She takes his hand. The contact is electric. His grip is warm, solid, impossibly gentle for someone who just threw a man to his death. He pulls her forward, not roughly, but with enough certainty that her legs have no choice but to follow. They stand together at the edge of the platform, silhouetted against the rising moon, and Thalara feels the weight of history shifting beneath her feet. Frostlands! Bravenn's voice booms across the capital, and the word carries with it centuries of authority. You came here tonight expecting to witness an execution. Instead, you will witness a coronation. The crowd erupts in confused murmurs. Elder Morwen's voice cuts through from her position near the spire's base. My king, surely you don't mean she is human. She has no claim. She has every claim. Bravenn doesn't raise his voice, but somehow it becomes louder, more absolute. This woman offered her last piece of bread to a dying predator. She chose mercy when survival demanded cruelty. She saved my life, when the law of the Fang decreed I should perish for my weakness. His hand tightens on Thalara's, a silent anchor. If that is not the mark of a queen, then I have no use for queens. He turns to her then, and in his eyes she sees something that makes her throat close. Not just gratitude, not just respect, but recognition. The kind that comes from two souls who have both known hunger, abandonment, and the impossible choice between surviving and remaining human. Thalara Zerain, he says, and her name in his mouth sounds like a prayer. Will you stand beside me? Will you help me rebuild this kingdom on the foundation of the mercy you showed me? Her voice comes out cracked, barely audible. I'm nobody. I'm nothing. You are the reason I live. His free hand rises, and clasped in his palm is a circlet of silver, not wolf's teeth like Varric's stolen crown, but woven branches with small crystals that catch moonlight like frozen tears. You are the reason this kingdom gets a second chance. He places the circlet on her head. The weight is negligible. The significance is crushing. Thalara's knees buckle, but Bravenn's hand keeps her upright, keeps her standing when every instinct screams to kneel, to hide, to run from this impossible reality. I can't, she whispers. You already did, he counters. Everything else is just details. He turns them both back to face the crowd, his arm moving to rest across her shoulders in a gesture that is both protective and declarative. The law of the Fang is abolished, he announces, and the words land like boulders in still water. From this day forward, the Frostlands will be governed by a new principle. Strength matters, but so does mercy. Survival matters, but so does compassion. We will honor the wolf, he gestures to himself, and the human, he gestures to Thalara, because it took both to save this throne. The silence stretches. Thalara can feel the resistance in it, the centuries of ingrained belief, pushing back against this radical shift. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, a single voice calls out, "Hail the king!" Another joins, then 10, then hundreds. "Hail the king! Hail the queen!" The chant builds like a wave, crashing over the spire, washing away the bloodlust from moments before. Not everyone joins. Thalara can see pockets of resistance, faces twisted in disgust, hands clenched in fury. This won't be easy. The old guard won't surrender without a fight. But standing here, crowned in silver and moonlight, her hand in a king's grip, she realizes something that makes her spine straighten. She's not afraid anymore. Bravenn leans close, his breath warm against her ear. Ready to change the world, little queen? Thalara looks out across the Frostlands, at the city sprawling below, at the frozen wilderness beyond, at the faces both hostile and hopeful turned up toward the spire. She thinks of the girl she was 3 days ago, starving and abandoned, and the woman she's become, through nothing but choosing kindness when the world demanded cruelty. Yes, she says, and means it. The sun rises over the Frostlands for the first time in generations, casting light on a kingdom forever changed. King Bravenn and Queen Thalara descend the lunar spire together, hand in hand, ready to write a new law, one where mercy is not weakness, one where humans and wolves stand equal, one where a starving girl's choice to feed a dying monster becomes the foundation of a dynasty. The old world is dead. The new one begins now. Thank you for watching. Kindly like this video, comment your thoughts, and hit the subscribe button. This is part of your great support towards the growth of the community we are building.